Okay, welcome to this 3ds Max tutorial. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how we can take a reference image, like this image that I have in our assignments announcement, and I can take that image into 3ds Max, use it as a reference to create a 3D mesh, and then we're going to take that fish and apply it to a spline so that we can get it to animate and swim on the path. So I'm going to jump into 3ds Max, and we're going to start creating our model here. First thing I'm going to do is save my file so that I don't have to worry about it crashing or anything. So I'm going to overwrite the one I did earlier. Okay, so to begin, first I have the image ready to go already in my downloads. So I just want to bring this image into 3ds Max. I'm going to do that by opening my material editor and going to the default material editor. And I can just drag and drop my fish into one of these material slots here. There we go. So now I can apply that onto a plane, and then I can start tracing around that to create my object. So first I'm going to create a plane, and I might use my keyboard entry for this, and 3ds Max is in inches, so this is going to be 25 by 25. That'll work. And I'm going to hit create, and there's my plane. Now I can drag my material onto my plane here, and there's my reference image. Next, I'm going to rotate this so that I can work with it on the x-axis. So just rotate it 90 degrees, just down here in the little XYZ option tools. Don't know what they're called down there really. Now I'm going to take this and start modeling a box around this fish so that I can start modeling this. So I'm going to draw a cube. Same thing, I might start with my keyboard entry and say this is going to be 24 by 24 and 24. And create. Okay. So that might be a little large. So I might now go into my modifiers and add an edit poly so that I can start moving this around and getting it to the position I want to. So edit poly. There we go. And next thing I want to double check is how many length and width segments that I have on my box. So I'm going to go from my default shading turned on edge faces. And you can see in my plane I have extra faces that I don't want, or extra edges. So I can go to my plane and turn those down to 1. And I'm going to go to my cube. I'm going to make sure that I have a few length and width segments before I get started. So I'm going to go back to my box, add a couple of these. I might add one this direction to cut it in half. I might add 3 or 4 this direction, maybe like 5. And then I'm going to just do 3 on height segments. And that should be good. Now I'm going to go back to my edit poly. And you want to make sure that you have the right length and width segments before you go forward in your timeline, because if I start moving things around and I go back and change my length and width, then it will affect my edit poly because all the numeric values of the vertices has changed. So next I'm going to go in and I can start modeling my fish. I can maybe do half of this and mirror the other half, but I'm going to just at least rough out my fish to begin with and go into a side view. I'm going to start moving some of this around so that I can work with this. If I want to have my other viewports open, I'm going to hit this little plus sign and do restore viewports. And then I can change some of these so that I can turn off wireframe override and see kind of what is happening with it. And I might do the same on my other views, change those wireframe, turn that off. And I might even turn on my edged faces in my viewports. Yeah, so now I have my left view, right view, and top view. So for this fish, I might honestly delete half of this so that I can just mirror the whole object on the other side. So I'm going to go grab these faces. Okay, so now with my edit poly, I can select those edges and delete those back faces. And now I have that nice and open on the back. So then I can add a mirror modifier later on and then just mirror the exact same mesh on the other side. So I have to create it once. So that I only have to create it once. Now I'm going to go in and start moving my object around, scaling it down, moving it until I like what it looks like. And I may even go to my vertice selection or my vertex selection so that I can start modeling this a little bit. If some of my vertices get off, I can select all those and just go to their placement here and type 0 and then do 0 this way. Or maybe not on the x-axis, maybe undo that one, do on the y-axis, and then it should be zeroed. Now I'm going to go through and start moving basic points to each check mark here and see if I can do this here. Okay. Maybe to help me line it up, I can just move this down a little bit to begin with. And I'm just going to line up the last vertices there. These next ones might be in the middle of the fin. These ones might go about midway. Move some of these over. This is going to be about this point here on the fish, and then this will be the last bit of the head. Maybe I could even move this over a little bit more. There we go. And then I can move this back up and start readjusting the rest of the way. Now I'm going to start bringing in a lot of my object here, start creating its shape. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller and then kind of rebuild my shape as I go. I can also use the scale tool if I want to, and scale these down. And when I'm doing the scale tool, I'm grabbing just the y-axis so that it doesn't move from this edge here, so that it doesn't mess up my mirror. Okay, that's a nice rough shape. So now I can go in and start looking more on some of the details of everything. So maybe this here is the bottom part of the mouth. This part here could be the top part of the mouth. This here could be the crown or the top part of like the head. And when moving my vertices, I might make it where I overextend, cut a little bit of the edges so that I'm not putting this edge right on the line. I'm putting it more out just a little bit so that the curve is going to be a little bit of an average between the rest of those points, if that makes sense. So I'm going to line this up roughly, and I'm just working in my front viewport still. And I'm planning ahead and moving some of these vertices to get kind of a nice curve here a little bit. Okay, now I even might fix up some of these inside pieces. This here might be something kind of more like this. And then this one can also curve back. Maybe something like this. So that it's almost like you have a curve going this direction up and a curve down to help make it a three-dimensional kind of like curve shape. And then I have a curve here going kind of like a crescent shape going towards the back of the fish. Same with this one here is going back, and then I flip directions right before the fin so that this curve goes the other direction. This might be nice to stay nice and vertical, and then I can change a couple of the vertices to get the fin. And this indent here, I might add in later with the next level of when we do the turbo smooth. On one level of the turbo smooth, I might add that back in. So I'm going to move this roughly to the position I want. There. Okay. So to begin with, I'm going to turn off my edit poly. I haven't done the side or anything yet. It's just a block for the basic shape. But I'm going to add my modifier and then my turbo smooth just to see what it's looking like. So I'm going to add my mirror. And I want it to mirror on the Y plane. And I want to copy it. And I want to make sure that my object is actually zeroed out here. I guess it did get moved. And if my vertices are no longer matching, I can go back to my edit poly. And now that my object is zeroed out, I can grab these top vertices, go to the Y and change that to 0. And now it should be zeroed out. Go back to my mirror. That looks pretty good. And now I'm going to add my turbo smooth. There. Something like that. So that's what my fish is looking like. So now I can go back in the timeline and change some of the edges here, make it not so square, and add more details in. Okay, so my fish is looking pretty good. I might change some of my viewports here so that I can see this a little bit better. There. So now I'm going to start working on like my side and my top views to get this a little more rounded out. So I'm going to go back to my edit poly and turn that on. There we go. And now I can go in here and with my modifiers in here, they're referencing itself back. So now I can go in and try to start working on modeling this a little bit nicer. So I might grab an edge here, and I'm going to even scroll down and maybe use my soft selection. So I'm going to go down here to my soft selection and check use soft selection. And now if I grab a vertice, and it's not letting me grab the exact vertices because it's showing the turbo smooth from later on. So I might just turn that off by hitting my little show end result with this little button here. So I can toggle that on and off by hitting kind of like the timeline bar. So I'm showing only my current spot. And I can go into my soft selection and change my value until it's something I want, or maybe even turn off if I don't need to, and start adjusting the shape of my fish. I'm going to start by roughing out the curve of the shape of my fish, kind of like a top down. It's going to get really narrow right by the fin. Fin's usually pretty thin. Okay, that's looking a little better. Maybe if I want to move some of these vertices around a little bit more, I can grab maybe these ones here, use my side viewport to see what I have selected, and move these back. And these next ones, move them around. I can also go to my scale tool if I want to level something out. I can scale it on the x-axis until it zeroes out. The next thing I could do, if I want to add this little indent where the fin is, as well as where the mouth is going in and adding a loop cut. So to do that, up in my top tab, I can go to polygon editing, and I might just want to pin this, or maybe even hit the drop down. There we go. Hit the little drop down here, and now we have our modeling tab. In our modeling tab, we have Swift Loop. I'm going to go in and add our loop that I want to here. And then I can hit escape to be done with that one. Okay. And now I have an extra loop that I can go through and continue editing. I might go back to my Turbo Smooth and back to see the result and then adjust accordingly. Or I could turn on my end result mode, maybe grab my vertice ahead of time, turn on end result, move this around. Okay. Okay, so if that is done, now I have my basic fish object. I don't have my fins yet, except for the tail fin. If I want to try to lay that out and put my texture to it, I can drag and drop my texture onto my fish, and it's not lining up exactly how I want. So I might go in and add a UVW map and change it to the correct settings that I want. I might do a box just to see for now. And I bet if I tried to match my plane, which is 25 by 25, and I go to my UV app and I change my length and width to 25, 25, 25, there we go. Now it fits exactly to the same thing that is referencing on my plane, so I'm just using a couple values there to help land it out. That was also kind of why I started originally with a cube, where before, this was my original cube. It was really large. It was also about that same size, so that once I apply that UVW map, everything lines up pretty well. Now I'm using a box, so it clips a little bit at the top. I could try planar and change the plane that I want to Y. That actually looks pretty good. I could change a couple other things, but that's looking pretty nice. So if I want to add another edit poly, I might want to add it underneath my UVW map. Or we might be able to try to move our UVW map down before in our hierarchy, and now it's a little bit different. And there we go. Okay, now I'm going to save. Now I'm going to add a new edit poly. And if you see, if I start going to my edit poly and moving anything around, it stretches the texture. So I'm going to delete that edit poly. I'm actually going to take my UVW map and bring it back up to the top, and then add my edit poly. And again, I want to make sure that my UVW map is at the top. So then if I go back to my edit poly and see my end result, then if I move any of my image around, I can kind of let it keep the same mapping applied up here. there we go. So now if I add my edit poly below my UVW map, and I move it at all, it will keep the normal texture coordinates. So now I can go through Okay. If I go to vertex selection, then it's a little easier to manipulate. Now, with the basic shape and my texture on there, and the UVW map is above my edit poly, then I could go in here and use my soft selection to start really changing the shape of this and getting it a lot closer. So here I found an issue where it wasn't doing my mirror because some of my vertices got off. If I go back to my original edit poly, I can go and select all those side vertices. And go back to my Y and move them all to 0. And if it does the midpoint of all of them, I could go to my scale tool, scale them down until they're 0, and then I can move them back. Now if I go ahead, it fixes that one. And my turbo smooth still is working. So because I wasn't checking my mirror beforehand, and when it mirrors them and it's welding those vertices together, my vertex count has changed. And so now going to this edit poly, the edits are not the same because the movements applied to the vertices, it changed which vertices it's applying it to. So I have to just delete that edit poly and start that one back over. It's good to check your mesh as often as possible. Stuff does still happen. Okay, so I like how my fish is looking for the main body of it. I'm going to rename my box here just so that it can be the right name. There we go. And now I'm going to go in and add all the other details like the top fin and then my fin. I'm just going to do this one here and mirror that same fin on the back side. I don't need to work on this fin because it's just like a perspective drawing. So I'm going to work on the fin first and then I'll work on the top after. So I'm going to start with the same kind of method. I'm going to go to my box and do keyboard entry. And I'm going to do 10 by 10. See how that does. And I'm also going to adjust my length and width segments before I get started. So I might just do something like that. If I'm doing the fit, be good. Maybe one more on the height. Wait, so do maybe 12 on the height, or wait, 10. Height, I want 12. Then maybe do one more height segment. There we go. So that's going to be my fin. It's a little large, but I still like just to have something, and then I can work with everything else. And again, I'm going to leave its origin point at 0, comma 0. That's the most important bit. And then I can add my edit poly and go in and start moving it to approximately where I want it. I'm even going to move it off to the side, scale it down. And I'm really just trying to rough out its approximate location, kind of like I've been doing the rest, and then adding details in as I go. That looks okay. Now maybe I could start rotating this. That's about the position I'm wanting it to be in. It's a little undersized so that I can move it to right where I want it to be. And that looks pretty good so far. I might also maybe try to rotate this from top angle. Spin it over there. Okay. So that's looking pretty close. So now I can start modeling out it then. I could also add in my mirror modifier before I get going any further. Mirror. And I want it to make a copy on the y-axis. And now we're ready to go. And now I can go into my edit poly again. I have my end result checked just so I can have that mirror on the other side. And now I'm going to go into my vertex selection and start moving this around, especially using my soft selection so that I can start making my shape. Alright, oh, even turn off my edit preview, I guess it didn't show me my soft selection. So with that there, neat little trick I might do if I grab, let's see, I'm going to grab my front face here, turn off my soft selection, and if I just scale this down, I can get my nice little offset and do the same on the backside. I want to get a nice angle on here. I can increase my soft selection so that my red is just at these points on my fin, or maybe the whole bottom edge. This might look good. And then leave the blue section, the end of the fall off right to the very end of my object, maybe a little bit lower. And then I can just take the whole thing and drag that over. See if that will make it a little bit of a fin, kind of a weird stretched shape a little bit. There we go. Now with it sculpted, I can start getting a little bit closer to how I actually want it to merge with the fish itself. Well, that looks good. Same thing, I'm going to do my UVW map to make sure it lines up. UVW map. And I'm going to do the same plane as I set my reference plane, which was that 25, 25. That's this one here. It's just length and width is 25 by 25. And so if that's what it's pasted on, then if I match that, and I'm going to go, oh, I'm not seeing anything first, so let me apply my texture. Go. And you can already see, since I set that by 25 by 25, and if I go to planar on the y-axis, doesn't look like it fits exactly. And it could be because my 0 point is in a different location. So if you go to my UVW map, and I turn it on, you can see its Z location is at -3. I just want to zero that out. Same with X. Zero out the location of the UVW map. And now it'll fit. Now I can turn that back off. And if I want to go back to my edit poly, turn on the end result so that I can go to my vertex selection and do the same I was doing before. I'm not going to use my soft selection this time. Might resculpt some of this inside geometry to help that bevel look a little bit more natural. So I'm going to do the same thing with this top fin, go through and lay that out, and then we'll see how it goes. Okay. So for this top part, I'm going to go in here, do the same thing. I'm going to add my box with my keyboard entry and just leave it right there at 0, 0. But I might change some of my length and width on there before I get going. I want my width to be just as long as the object. But again, I don't want to move my origin of my object. I want to keep it at 0, 0, 0. So I'm not moving my object yet. I'm just scaling it to a rough position. Change my length and width. I probably only need 3 heights, maybe. And then I'm going to need a lot more width. Probably something like 10. Maybe do something lower, like 6. And we can turbo smooth it. And I probably should do that on my fin as well. Actually, my fin isn't too bad at the poly count it's at, so I might even try to do the same here. Try to get these squares very similar to my fish. I might do 7, maybe 8. And then we should be good. Now I'm going to add my edit poly, go from there. Let's go in here and get our basic shape using our soft selection. Um, I'm hitting Q up here to change my brush selection here. So you can get a paintbrush selection. And then I can just select those edges, change my fall off. And I'm going to do the same on my top. I'm going to go to my scale. And I can scale top to be a little skinnier. And kind of taper down. You hold down Shift as you're selecting. You can select multiple objects. So if I click an edge and hold Shift before I click the edge, and then go all the way down to the bottom, I can select that full edge. Didn't need this piece here. Let me try that again. Deselect everything. Hold Shift. I have to hold Shift the whole time, so grab that starting edge, and then go all the way to the end. All right, with that done, I can now go in and apply my UVW map and do just like I did before, where I'm going to do planar on the y-axis. And before we do that again, let's apply our texture. There we go. And now on our planar, if we just change this to our original 25 by 25, which is our planar reference, which is this one here. Then same thing, it's not lining up just yet, so we have to turn on our UVW map and move it to 0, 0, and then it should be nice and lined up. And there we go. And now there I have my fully sculpted fish. I haven't joined everything together, but there's the nice low poly version of my fish. And now I could boolean everything together and then make it one object and apply it onto a path. Okay, so now for this last section, we are going to take this whole object, boolean the whole thing together, and make it one fish so we can apply that onto a path. First thing I'm going to do is I like to just make a copy of everything and move it off to the side so that I can come back to it in case I need something. Because then I can keep my original objects. If I want to, we can add this to a folder or, let's see. There we go. We can add this to a container here. And adding this to a container, you can see it's like inside of a box. And that's just a helper. It won't actually show up. So I can even turn that off if I want. But now if I move that entire box around, it moves everything inside that container, kind of like it's a folder. And then I can also just hide all these if I want to as well. Containers are just useful just to help hold location data of all your objects together. But it'll work for what we're doing right here, so that'll work. Next, I'm going to take my main fish, and I'm going to start applying all my other objects to it. First thing I want to do is collapse my modifier stacks. I can do that by right-clicking and convert to editable poly or editable mesh. I'm going to do an editable poly. There we go. So now there's all baked. And now you can't go back and change the modifier stack like we were in the previous model. And that's why I like to have a copy of this off to the side. Now with this one, I'm going to take the main body of my fish, and that's where I'm going to add my Boolean operations. Just Boolean. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the union, and we're going to add multiple operands. And we're just going to click on our top fin. Oh. There we go. Turn on my modifier. There we go. And multiple operands. Click on my fin. And then go back. Okay, we're going to add our Boolean operation. Nope. I'm going to add my Boolean to my main fish. And now we're going to add operands, and we're just going to click our fin there, and then click our lower fins. And then we can just turn off our Boolean. And now we can see the whole thing is one nice object. And then same thing, I can even collapse that by converting that finally to one last editable poly. So now I have my whole fish. It's one solid object. And now I can apply that onto a path. So I'm just going to make sure it's zeroed out at the 0 world origin. So now to get this onto a path, let me change my view a little bit. This up here can be my top view now. Okay. So now if I want to get this fish to swim along a path, I'm going to go in and go back to my my create tab. And I'm going to go to shapes. And in there should be, the first one is going to be splines. And I'm just going to go in and let's do a spline or just a normal line. And if I go to a top view, if you click and drag at each vertice point, you can get it to be a curved line. If I click once, it's a sharp corner, but if you click and drag, it's nice and curved. So sharp corners are going to be a little weird when it comes to the animation, so I might try to click and drag for each one of these. It's okay to add more vertices than not, so I'm going to add a whole bunch here. Maybe it goes in a circle. And then it's going to come back to the start. And then I can just hit escape to finish that out. If I want to change the shape of my line, I can go back into my line just like it's already an editable poly and move some of these around. Change the scales of the accelerations or these little handles on my lines as well. So I can move where it's swimming. And then you could also do like a side or another view so that you could actually move some things around so that maybe there's a tunnel inside here he's swimming around. I might move the whole path up. Move this part up as well. You can even change the handles in 3-dimensional space. So maybe they swim all the way up and then kind of curve back down. If I want to scale that handle, you can use the scale tool. Move that down so it's a little bit smaller. And there we go. So now that's my path. I can now save my file. And now I'm going to get the fish to swim along this path. So I'm going to go back to my normal, my fully collapsed mesh for my fish. And I'm going to add a path deform. So path deform. And with that, now I can go and on my path deform, I'm just going to go to this none and use that and turn that on and select my path. And now if you scroll your percentage up, you can see the fish swims along the path, but it's not in the right orientation. So I'm going to go back to 0. My path deform axis, I can just cycle through these. I can see X is my forward axis because we were working on the Y axis as the drawing plane. So X was facing the front of a fish, and then I can flip it. So now it's swimming along the path in the correct orientation. You can also see when it gets towards the end of the path, towards 90%, he starts to turn a little bit. So we can fix that in our animation by doing some of the twist amounts. So we'll have to animate our path percent as well as our twist. So I'm going to 0 everything out. And now we can start animating. Okay. So if I want to animate this now, I'm going to open up my time bar a little bit here. And okay, so now if I want to start animating this whole scene, I can start by going to my time configuration and choosing all of my frames here. My start and end time, I'm going to do 100 frames for this animation. And
at 30 frames per second. That's about 3 seconds and a little bit of extra. So that should be pretty good. If you want to change that, I might make this a looping animation if you only want it to about maybe 5 seconds. We could do that where we could do 120 or so. Maybe that's 4 seconds. And then that should be good. There we go. So now we have a little bit of extra time in here, and we can start adding our keyframes. I'm going to click on our fish and turn on my auto key. And I'm also going to hit plus to do a set key at the very beginning. Now, if I go to my percentage, I might go to the very last keyframe to frame 120 and change that to 100%. And with my auto key on, if you see that little red bounding box outside of my percent, that's the keyframe for that position. And it's saved right down here as a black key marker. So that looks pretty good. Now I can also go through and start adding keyframes for my rotation. So I can click 0 for my starting rotation, and maybe they go up here, and maybe I want them to turn as they go around twists a little bit. So I'm going to increase my angle here just a couple, have them swim forward a little bit, and then right at the end here, I could have him at a big turn, and then I'm going to go forward to about right here before he starts the next turn. Flip it over, starts the other turn, and then I can level him back out. And then let's see what that looks like. So now I can play this. It's really fast, so maybe I could scale this whole time frame down at the end, but if going one by one, looks pretty good how he turns around the corners. That one's a sharp turn. You can kind of see how it deforms the geometry that way, so you want to avoid sharp turns in your path. Maybe we could put a house or a tunnel or something they're swimming through to block that there. Same thing, I'm going to go, if I want to just add a keyframe, I can just move up and down my slider. And then I'm going to go forward so that they turn a little on that path. And then if I didn't do it at the right time, maybe I can move my keyframes around. There we go. And then before they go up, they level back out. And they're swimming up for a little bit, so I can just make another keyframe here, just move that little slider a tiny bit. Have them turn. So we can kind of see them start to turn here. And then here they get a little too far, so this is where I can start to correct that turn, bring them back. So really, on my keyframes, it's making dramatic change, but it looks now like he's swimming how I want him to go. Ooh. Looks like he's doing 180 degrees here or something. I think he's twisting all the way back around. So if we look at our amount, we can adjust some keyframes to help fix some of these parts. So I'm going to go in here, change this keyframe. And if I go forward and see if I can start to fix this, it could be that our actual path is twisted. So if I go to my line, if it's a little too tight, it could be because of how much is going on here. So I might just add another vertice in here. I'm going to go and select both these vertices. Right click and create a line. No. Here you can see right where it's twisting all the way around 180 degrees. So it could just be the rotation of my actual line. But if I can't figure out how to do this, I could add something else to hide that little part of my render that is not acting as I'm expecting. I'm just going to go back to my animation, and maybe they swim into a tunnel at this point. Go to the edge, beginning of the circle, add a little curve. Go to the end of that curve, and the start of the next, add a little more curve. And then go to the very beginning and level it back out. And there we go. So now that's my animation created. I'm going to save my file. I can turn off auto key. And now I can play my animation, see what it looks like. It looks good, but it's very fast. So let's change that by going to our keyframes. Change this to double our time, maybe 240. And I can just take my fish, and it has all its keyframes. You can select the keyframes, and if you scale it, you can select these keyframes and scale it using this little time slider here, up to 240. And now we just added twice as many frames. And now it looks a lot better. There we go. Cool. So now I can save that, and now I have my animation ready. I might go into my container here and hide my other fish, just so I don't have it work right now when I'm working on. Right. And if I want to change how fast this fish is swimming at the beginning and the end, I could go into my graph editor, but I think this will be okay for my animation. I'm just going to leave it as is. I might add a couple more environmental items in here where I can go into my objects, add something like a teapot. Find where a fish slides through this little thing and make him slide through or swim through the teapot a little bit. Now it intersects with my line a little bit, or the teapot I placed. I could go back to my line and move that vertex around. So here, maybe just scale it down a little bit. Same with this edge. Might mess with my animation a little bit too much if I move my line too much, so I might have to go and repair some of my keyframes. But otherwise, it's looking pretty good. There we go. So now there's my render, or there's my animation. So now I can set up some cameras, animate this, and render the whole thing out. That's about it for this tutorial. I'll show rendering and all that other kind of stuff in another tutorial. And I think I have another video about rendering in the course as well. And good luck, and hopefully it works out.